Surrender is a choice to say you don't have it figured out. So
Yeah.
get over yourself.
In this episode of Sense-Making Conversations, we explore what happens when the life you've built on performance, achievement, and control stops working, and what it takes to build something better. My guest is Kellan Fluckiger, a former C-suite executive in the energy sector who had everything on paper and nothing in his soul. His story is of breakdown, addiction, spiritual reckoning, and eventual transformation. And it's a powerful mirror for anyone questioning the story of success they've been living. From divine intervention to deliberate change, Kellan offers a rare and deeply honest look at what it means to rebuild not just your life, but your sense of self. If you've ever felt the pressure to keep it all together or wondered what's left when you finally let go, this conversation is a testament to what's possible on the other side of that. I'm Andrea Sampson, and this is Sense-Making Conversations. Welcome, Kellan. I am so excited to have you here today and to really dive into your world and your world of living your ultimate life. I love that concept because that is really, don't we all want to live our ultimate life? But I know that your story didn't start 5 minutes ago, and living your ultimate life is something you've come to. So can you help us to understand what got you to the point of being able to talk about living your ultimate life?
I will, and I do, and thank you for having me, Andrea. First, I want to honor you as a host, because putting on a podcast or a show of any kind is a labor of love. And you're doing it because you care about what you do, you care about the message you have. And based on what we chatted about just a minute ago, you're trying to do something really important. You're trying to work with people who have a big impact, either in position or in the technical work they do, and take them from that sort of isolated space where we think that hardcore bottom line or mathematics or the STEM concepts or those kind of breakthrough, that's all that really matters. And the rest of stuff, which is spirituality, relationships, and everything else, is kind of this crap that gets in the way, and we do it after hours. And your goal to bridge those and, in fact, help people understand the foundation of your life is that feeling and those things. And it's not something to be ignored or given second, the back bench. So I love that. And thank you for being
Well,
who you
thank
are.
you. Thank you for that validation and that recognition. That is so that's powerful. And I honor you in terms of the work you do. And so I want to jump into that because I think there's so much. I know that your background, you were one of those people in many ways.
I was. So for all of you listening, I had C-suite positions in the US and Canada, and I worked in a very technical field, electric power generation and transmission, which is all full of engineers, bachelor, master, PhD stuff, and creation of electricity markets, which is then overlays, the economic piece and how much you can, of this public good of electricity, you can turn over to market forces, which, we've been doing this since 96 and it's now 30 years on, and the jury is still out about the answer to that question of whether or not that's a good idea, because we've created this social contract of always having enough. Anyway, and markets don't do social policy, but don't get me started on that. So I did. I spent 30 years in the electric business in very senior positions in both US and Canada. And like I talked about in the beginning, I lived a life that was a dual life where my focus was on getting, promotions and making a lot of money, which I succeeded at doing, and failed miserably at life and was miserable behind the scenes. I didn't have a meaning or purpose, and thought, like many do, that meaning and purpose had to come from either the contributions you're supposed to be making or the money you made or position or whatever. And, that is a train wreck, a slow motion or a fast motion train wreck. I promise you. And you can argue with me all you want, but it is. So I spent many years that way. And finally, when I was 52, I had an awakening, a divine intervention, shall we say, that gave me the invitation to get off of the treadmill of more and higher and bigger cash and behind the scenes ruined relationships, addictions, in my case, suicide attempts and really serious problems. Get off of that and then ask the fundamental question, like, what are we really doing here? And what are we really about? And understanding that you don't have to not contribute or not make big cash, and you can base it on a whole and solid foundation of understanding the truth of who we are, of connectedness, of spirituality, and all that woo-woo stuff that we hear about, ignore until we don't, and thereby create this concept. And it's not a concept. And I want to make sure it's not left as a concept. My ultimate life, purpose, prosperity, and joy. And I have all of them every day. It's not something I'm trying to get to. I'm there and I love it. And so that's sort of the intro to that.
Yeah.
I went from mess to creation. And now my mission is to help as many people as I can who are feeling that pull go there.
So as I listened to you, what I heard is that, if we think about the stories that were driving you back in those days, it was really that story of, look, if you work hard and, go to the right schools or have the right education or, work in the right company that, and put your head down, work hard, and you'll be successful. Successful, of course, meant, well, you made a lot of money. You had a big title. You got to travel maybe around the world. You got to meet people who also considered themselves successful. These stories define us, right? That it is who we are based on the story that we're using to tell ourselves who we are. And that story took you down a pretty dark road because it didn't give you the purpose you thought it was going to give you. It didn't give you the end feeling of, oh, I'm contributing in a way that is powerful, because at the end of the day, there was no one that you were really helping, and you weren't even helping yourself. And so what I heard in your story was that there was a moment, something happened, and there was a moment that maybe you surrendered. And I know surrender is something that's important in your world. So tell me about what happened. What did that surrender look like for you?
August 2007. I'm 52 that year, born in 55. So I was going to be 52 in that year. And in August of 2007, I was back on top, and I'd lived a life of roller coaster. I struggled with depression. I had some challenging things happen in the childhood, and I'm not going to go over all that. Doesn't matter. But it left me feeling like I had to prove something, and it also left me believing I never would be enough. My version of proving that not true was to make all the cash and positions you talked about. But I didn't have a real purpose in life. So my journey led me to ruin 3 relationships, to trash 3 or 4 careers. And what I mean by that is I would get, really good promotions and stuff, and then I would do stuff intentionally to burn it down. And I don't know if any of your listeners have experienced that degree of self-sabotage, but I sure did, and I did it over and over again. It wasn't just once. So August of 2007, I'm back, making a lot of money, and I was also a drug addict, $3,000 a week. Cocaine was the favorite, and I was single again for the 3rd time. I had 4 kids, 4 of my 10 children living with me as a single dad, and I was a disaster, and I was so miserable that 2 weeks before this thing happened, I attempted suicide for the 2nd time. So that gives you a sense of the disaster that was Kellan. I came home that Friday night, and I was going to go out and party because that's all I ever did. And suddenly I had this urge to turn on the television. And that doesn't sound like anything, except I didn't know how. I picked up the remote and realized I'd never watched TV, so I didn't know how. And I had 4 teenagers, and we were the party house, so I bought had all that cool stuff. So my 16-year-old daughter, she punched some buttons and, threw the remote at me, dipweed. And it landed on a program, I don't know if it's on anymore because that's nearly 20 years ago, called Intervention, which is a reality TV show, or was, about people, families who stage professional interventions for busted loved ones. This protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched my life for about 10 minutes, and I said, yeah, I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off, and I went and did a few things and was ready to, go do stuff. And I just had this irrepressible urge to turn the TV back on. And so I did. And that program started over. And no, I didn't have a recording device. And no, it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. Yeah, I know. But it did. And I'm like, okay. So I watched it and it went badly. The guy got mad at his family and stomped out of the intervention and swore he didn't have a problem. And, you know the drill. But instead of, when I, watched it, it just freaked me out. So instead of going out to party, I went to bed. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere, it felt out of body. I was in a big room, theater kind of thing. And there were scenes from the stage, on the stage. And the scenes were all scenes from my life. Now, it wasn't like a life review at all. It was just scenes focused on suffering. The suffering that I experienced as a kid, up through the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else as a liar and a drug addict and a failure in 3 marriages. And, the list is really long, right? And the experience of watching that all was so intensely painful, I couldn't tolerate it. It was in agony. So after a long time, I heard a voice speak really clearly over my right shoulder, and it said, "It is enough." I woke up and I was completely disoriented for 3 reasons. 1, I was all twisted around upside down and backwards in bed. 2, the sheets were so wet you could wring them out. And I don't know why, but the only thing I can think of is the intensity of the experience was so dramatic that I'd lost several pounds of water in the process. But the weirdest thing was the sun was shining in the window and the windows faced west. I got up and realized it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for 18 hours. And I realized one thing: I had been invited to change. And I had no idea what to do, where to start, how to do this. But yeah, it was clear I had been invited. So I said, okay, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what it even means. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm done. So I got up and I threw away about $1,000 worth of drugs and stuff I had laying around, because I always did, and I quit. Cold turkey that day. And that got me sober, but it didn't do anything about how I got there in the first place, which was, severe depression and self-sabotage and all the rest. But that was the first half. The second half, I went back to work Monday. And because of the position that I had, I used to get all kinds of free stuff because I made decisions that affected other companies, sometimes to the tune of billions of dollars. So I got lots of Be Nice to Kellan stuff. Not bribes, but, free tickets to this and free expensive bottles of booze and front row seats to that kind of stuff. And one of the things I got was a free pair of tickets to see a Yo-Yo Ma concert. If you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. But in the classical world, that's like, oh, yeah. So I'm going, okay, I'm going. But I had 2 tickets and I didn't have anybody to take. And I was not in that universe. So I thought, okay. And I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music. And a woman in one of the groups said, well, I do. I said, well, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, well, here you go. See you there. So I gave her the ticket. We met at the venue. And now, as of the concert date, I'm now 2.5 weeks stone cold sober. So the concert was amazing. And we met there, but of course the seats were together. And halfway through the show, I had this feeling come over me that I recognized from, a couple of weeks before. And this voice said to me, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you're insane. I've screwed that up 3 times. I clearly do not know how to do this. And besides that, I'm exactly 2 weeks sober. Are you out of your mind? So later that night, we were backstage. They were like $1,000 tickets, backstage passes, reception, all that kind of stuff. The voice came back and said, and you need to tell her tonight. Wow. And then I went really crazy and I thought, well, there's a couple of problems with that. I mean, I know her because she works in one of my groups, but I didn't know her well enough to know if she had a relationship. And besides that, like she could have me arrested or something for harassment or whatever. So I said, no, besides the obvious, no. But you don't win those arguments. So I did, and it went about like you would have expected. Are you insane? And she left, but she didn't call the cops and she didn't call HR, and she wasn't in a relationship, which I didn't know. About 2 weeks late, 3 weeks later, she had her own set of experiences, and I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts. She walked away from her career, and we walked off into the sunset together. And we just celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary a few months ago.
Wow.
The story is amazing, but the reason this was the second half of the divine intervention is because she was literally the angel that was sent to help me learn how to be a person, learn how to have a friend, to be a friend, to trust and to speak. And something that, even though I'd been married 3 times, I had never done, which is why they'd all failed. So that's what happened in August, September
Wow.
of 2007. And the last piece is, it's important to understand that it's an invitation.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is because you all have these intuitions that you feel from time to time. And the only reason mine was so stark is because I'd ignored them all. Maybe you have too. So this was a 2x4, but it was still an invitation because it didn't do any of the work. That was still to come.
As I listen to that story, I mean, that is an incredible story. In it, so much there, from everything from, divine intervention, as you've mentioned, but mostly what I hear in that story is surrender.
Absolutely.
I hear you, this, this person who was caught up in the material world of success and money and power and privilege, who was living a life that felt empty in many ways, and you were filling it with all the things that you were literally being told should make it feel full, and it wasn't. Um, you have this experience that takes you into a place of inner inquiry. What is going on? And you surrender to it. And surrender is one of those words in our lives that we avoid. We think it's a bad thing. We think surrender is, oh, I give up. And I think, the thing that I've learned over my life is that surrender is one of the hardest things for us to do, because it isn't giving up, it is trusting, it's allowing. And you had, for you, probably the biggest breakthrough of your life in those moments of surrender. You found not only a wife, but somebody who could help you become a better person. And you surrendered to being a better person, to doing the work. And that, I'm sure, didn't take 5 minutes.
It
But
was at least 3 years of work. And I love your word surrender. Surrender is a choice to say you don't have it figured out. So
yeah,
get over yourself. Okay. And we think we do, and we think we're supposed to do it alone. And that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of from this point of view. But I understand feeling that way. You can't be vulnerable. You can't do this and you can't do that. And that precludes you from living in peace. It precludes you from the greatest growth you can have. And it precludes you from another truth, which is that we're really built to be together in community and to love and serve each other. Even if we're doing technical and other kinds of stuff, as humans, we are built to do that. And this was finally a loud enough invitation for me to start the work, which took 2 or 3 hard years of, meeting with shrinks and talking about and getting
yeah.
vulnerable and stuff I'd never done in my life at 52, to say, okay, I'm done with that. I don't know how hard this is going to be or how much broken glass I got to crawl over, but I'm going, which is the surrender you talked about.
I hear that because and I know that it's hard, but why is it that we resist surrendering so much? Especially we think about people out there listening to this, who maybe surrender, this concept of surrender is new to them, or maybe it's not. Why do we resist it?
Well, we equate it with abdication, first of all. Abdication means you giving up, or you're going to turn your life over to somebody else. And I don't think of it that way. I think of it as making a conscious and reasoned choice to admit fully and then follow that admission up with action. And the admission is, I don't actually know what I'm doing.
Mm.
And I didn't design this world. I didn't design this whole thing. And so the truth that my little experience in little microcosm of 10, 20, 30, 40, in my case, 52 years, somehow endows me with this greater wisdom is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of for me. And for that, surrender is to say, not abdication, but I choose to seek out and follow the wisdom. In my case, I'll call it the spirit, God, call it whatever you want to, but you know it's there and you felt it. So you can fight with it, you can ignore it, or you can surrender, which is a conscious choice to go to a place of learning and yearning for growth.
And so that's all inner work, right? All of that is like,
100%.
it's like you're turning away from the outer world, which is telling you one thing, and you're turning inward to the inner world, which is allowing you to see what's possible. And so what I'm hearing then is that we avoid surrender because really what we're doing is we're avoiding getting to know ourselves, getting to do that inner work.
That's right.
Why is inner work important then? What happens? What's the practical
You know
side?
what? I'm going to speak in a maybe offensive way to your folks. I don't care how much you've learned. I don't care how many degrees you got, and I don't care how much money you make. It ain't worth jack unless and until you come to grips with the truth of who we are as humans, what it means to be human and in community and in relationship in a deep and vulnerable and meaningful way. That's the place that satisfaction that you're looking for and craving comes from. You can never get enough money because money doesn't feed that. You can never get enough of what you don't need because what you don't need won't satisfy you. What you need is a connection to purpose. You need to wake up every day stoked out of your mind about what you get to do and who you are. And until you admit that, which took me a million years to do, till I was 52 to even start, and until you admit it and seek it and lean into it and allow yourself that vulnerability and truth of expression, you'll never find that thing you think you're looking for because we're looking in all the wrong places and we're looking to all the wrong things. And so the inner work, as we call it, I want to get rid of the idea. That's like the old notion of work-life balance. There's no such thing. You're a human. You're having an experience here you're a spiritual being having a human experience. Okay, fine. Part of that is getting a skill or a trade and making some money. But that's just a little piece, and it's not even the most important one, which is getting connected with who you are and then expressing that and allowing others to do the same and then being in a supportive construct intentionally. And that involves surrendering the ego and the fact that you think you know what you're doing because you don't. And then going down the road of saying, wow, what else is down here? There's a whole gold mine down here.
The way you've just described that, it makes a lot of sense. The inner work is really about connecting to the deeper humanity that is around us, right? This deeper connection of humanity. But the reality is, and you said it, we live in a world where money is important. We live in a world where the contribution we make is often through the work we do. And so, if I play, a little bit of the, sort of the devil's advocate here and say, well, but wait a minute, Kellan, I still need to make money because I got to buy groceries and I got to pay my rent and I got to do all of those things. So is inner work going to make me better at my job? Is it going to make me make more money at the end of the day? And in listening to your story, you were successful. You had all of those things. You didn't have the connection or the feeling of purpose. So when we think about doing that inner work, what shows up in us as leaders, as relationships, or even in the work that we do in our world? How does it change it?
All right. So what we've been taught is backwards. We've taught learn a bunch of crap, make a bunch of money, buy a bunch of stuff, and then you'll be happy. That's actually backwards. And I'm glad you said that because my mantra is the ultimate life, yours, not yours. And that is purpose, prosperity, which includes cash, and joy. And here's what I can tell you, and I'll say it without equivocation. You can make more money, make a bigger impact, and have more joy, purpose, prosperity, and joy when you do this work and discover your real gifts and talents. Like you have a set of skills that you've learned, maybe at university, maybe in a trade, and you've been selling those in the marketplace. That's great. That's only a third of your power. Your skills is a third. Another third is the gifts that you have. Maybe you have mined those and maybe you haven't. Maybe you have married those with your skills and most people don't. Maybe you have. And the third and most important part of this rope, this woven rope or triple helix like DNA, is your life experience. When you dig in and look at your skills, your gifts, and your life experience, you will find the thing that I label your MEO, most effective offering. And you can get paid for that more than you can get paid in pursuing this half-baked traditional thing that's only focused on the skills you sell in the marketplace. And surveys indicate 75, 80, 85%, depends on the survey you read, but people don't really like their job because it doesn't feel that. So I'm an example. I came from looking at one way. I'm now looking at another. And now I live, not in an imaginary way, not someday out there, with purpose, prosperity, and joy every day. I love it. I'm excited to get up and get after my day because I love what I'm doing. I get paid and paid well. And you can too, because I'm not magic. And I came through hell to get here.
What's going through my mind as you're talking, like I listen to this and think to myself, really what we're talking about is the stories that we tell ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the story of me? What's the story of you? And we all have these stories that we believe about ourselves. And then, if you are an employer, there's stories that we tell about the businesses we have and the people who work for us. And that one of the challenges, I think, and I'm really curious about how you look at this. So, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business. I make my money doing the work that I truly love. I mean, like you, I've had my moments of understanding that I am more than just the things that I do in my world. And I want the people who work with and for me to feel that same thing. And so, if we are telling stories about ourselves that are really building our purpose and our power, ultimately to create joy, how are we creating businesses? Or how are the businesses that we work within being affected when we retell these stories through this new lens?
Okay, so let's just talk about it from an employee perspective. If you choose to have a job and work for somebody else, that's fine. Nobody's going to say that's wrong. Everybody needs to go out and start a business. Great. Have a business. Have a job. Who are you as you go to that job? I hate this. I'm working for the weekend. Can't wait to get another flipping paycheck. Why would you settle for that kind of life? What would it be like if you chose to be the best employee there ever was, just because you can, just because you've decided to be this excited, contributing person, and you elect to put a roof over your head and food on the table by having a job. That's fine, as long as you don't despise what the company does. And if you do, go get another job. There's plenty of them. So you can absolutely choose who you're being, no matter what you're doing. And that's actually the most important choice you make. And it's the one we don't even think about. You talked about the stories that you tell yourselves. I'll bet most of your listeners, unless they've been working on this, don't even know the stories they tell themselves.
So
They're not even aware of, I certainly wasn't, of the story of not good enough, of the story of I have to prove this. I'll never make it. No matter how much money I was making, something bad's going to happen. If those are the stories that occupy space in your mind, no wonder you're creating either disaster or a low level of misery all the time. What if you had a story of you were wonderful? What if you had a story of you were doing your best all the time and you loved it and people just love to be around you? I don't care if you if you're the person that changes the water in the water cooler that people gather around and talk. What would prevent you from being the person that as soon as the water cooler gal comes in to change that thing, everybody's got to rush around because she's so much fun and she's such a light. What would that take? And if you want to create another business, here's what I've learned. the skills that I have and had as a manager and CEO and all that crap, and the technical things that I learned about electricity and markets and deregulation and all the rest, that lets me do certain things, and using those skills, mining the gifts that we all have, and then looking at my story of life experience, that allows me to do what I do. I'm an author. I've written 20 books. I'm a coach. I have clients around the world. I help people identify their own stories that they're not even aware of and say, is that really who you want running your ship? The story of I suck, the story of fear, is that who you want as the captain? Why don't we change that story? So this is why inner work is hard, because you have to admit that you have a story. You have to go listen to it and see what it is. Then you have to ask the question, is that who I want running the show? And, they're often woven into our low-level DNA, and we have competing stories and that kind of stuff. So it takes some soul searching and work just to find it. And then you have to decide it's worth the effort to change the game. And it's worth changing the game because you want to live excited and happy every day instead of fearful, worried about the economy or the government or the weather or God or whoever. You don't need to do that.
The stories we tell ourselves, which are mostly subconscious, we've got to surface them. That's the hard part. That's some of the inner work, is finding out what is that inner voice saying to us, hearing it. But is it as easy as, I'm just going to change my story, I'm going to believe something different? Or do I have to do, I think
it wasn't for me.
No, but I think one of the biggest criticisms of these types of ideas, right? The story, I can change my story, I can change my life. We've heard this before. But there's an implied outcome there that says, well, you don't really have to do anything other than think it into being. And I don't think that that's true. I think there's a lot that we have to do. And I think even listening to your story of change, I mean, like you said, you had 3 years worth of work you had to do before you could even get to the point where you could think about who you were and what that story might be, not is, but might be. So that work, what is it? What is the work we need to do? How do we surface the stories, and what work do we need to do?
Well, I'm not going to tell anybody how they have to do it. Here's what I discovered. I discovered one of my biggest flaws is I won't even call it a flaw. Barriers is I never got any help. So I had the story. Hello, here we are. The story that whatever was wrong with me, I had to just suck it up and fix it. And seeking help was somehow evil, wrong, and meant I was stupid or weak. If I broke my arm, I would go to the doctor and I wouldn't think stupid or weak. But if I'm behaving or thinking in a way that is like a busted arm, energetically or spiritually, in terms of how I create or live my relationships, it's still busted, and it's just as busted as a busted arm. So the two most important things that I did since 2007 was to admit, well, I won't say three things. Admit, this isn't working. I am not happy. I am not getting up every day excited and leaning into my life, whether it's personal or professional. It's just not there. There's moments, I buy another, hot rod or whatever, but that wasn't happy. 5 minutes. Okay, whatever. And is evidenced by the fact that, constant numbing, alcohol, drugs, whatever. So, first is just saying, wow, this isn't working. Got to do something. And then surrendering right to the truth that it isn't working. And you're not going to do this by yourself any more than you're going to set your arm or fight an infection or something. You got to go get whatever you need. And so getting help, admitting it, saying, wow, it's not weakness. It's a sign of strength and sanity. Like no Olympian ever got to the podium on their own.
Right.
No, it doesn't happen. So if you're trying to get to the Olympics in your life, i.e., be the best version of yourself, which is the squishy stuff we say, but think about it as your life Olympics. Do you want to wake up and live your day kind of half-assed every day, or you want to be in Olympic shape? Well, I don't know about you, but I like that one better now that I'm doing it. Yeah. So get help. That was number one. Number two is after I did that, I had to figure out who I wanted to be. Not because somebody else said it, And so I created both a process and a document. I call it PTAC, Personal Truth and Commitment document, which is, it's mine. It's personal. It is my own conversation with the creator. This is who I am. And it doesn't need anyone else's approval. It doesn't need to fit anybody's mold. It doesn't need anyone's permission. But it's a lot of hard work because we're living with all this supposed to this, supposed to that kind of story. So the creation of that document, which I've been working on and have worked on for at least a dozen years. And here's why it's powerful. I have worked on it and refined it so that when I speak it, and I have it memorized upside down and backwards, when I speak it, it lights the walls on fire. It lights my heart on fire. It reminds me of things that I have declared, and it feels like stardust all the time. And so that is the first thing, besides the getting of help. And the second thing is, okay, cool. Maybe everybody's gone to some conference where you create some kind of a statement that says, I am a wonderful, caring, compassionate, blah, or something like that. And I talk to people all the time that say, oh, yeah, I did all that. And I say, oh, good. Do you have it memorized? Mostly not. How do you use it? I don't know. It's here somewhere. And so then I ask a really telling question, which is this. When you read that document, and if it's only one sentence, you haven't done anything. So we're not even beginning yet. But when you read it in the mirror, does it make you weep? Does it light your heart, your walls on fire? And usually when I ask that kind of question, people's eyes get big and they're like, what? Yeah. And then I say, throw it away. You haven't said anything yet. You haven't even started to capture the truth of who you really are. And until you have something that moves you at that level, you haven't said anything yet. So that's the first piece. The second thing is, no matter how mighty of a declaration or document you create, it doesn't mean anything unless you have a daily creation process whereby you use those truths that you have declared, nobody has to approve them, and make that who you are. I call it a daily creation process because the word morning ritual carries with it all this kind of stuff, but it is a process that you do in the morning. And the reason you do is, what athlete warms up after the game? Like you just don't. So you have this tool that you lovingly and powerfully create with surrender, with help, with whatever. And then you say, well, how do I ensure that I'm that every day? Well, you have to devise a process. And so when I work with people, I don't care if they want to make money. I don't care if they're running this 8-figure company. The most important work we do, and the thing that makes them better at managing, better at running their company, more creative, more powerful, and bigger cash register, is to get this work done. Who you are because you say it and it lights you up, and how do you intentionally create yourself that way every day? So that's how you do it.
That's the work. That's the work. And so what I think is really, really powerful, we started off talking about the fact that, first of all, there has to be that surrender to the fact that you're not happy. In some way, you are identifying that the life you're living, the story you're telling yourself, whatever that story is not getting you closer to those moments of joy. I mean, joy is the fleeting momentary reminder that that being human is incredible. We have this feeling. We can't live always in joy, but we can have moments of joy. And so we're always trying to get there. And if your life is feeling a little devoid of joy, there's going to be a surrender of some sort to say, that was me. I created that. I created the life I have. I created the story I have. So the surrender to this fact that this is my creation and I get to do it again if I wanted to, if it's not serving me. And then doing what you just described, which is understanding that I've got to go get the help that I need to, first of all, understand the story I have been telling myself. And in doing that work, then replacing that story with something that does serve me, that gets me closer to it, and finding the joy that lives inside of that purpose so that everything I do is infused with that. Everything. And I think that's really probably the thing that's missing for most people is that as you describe the setting the walls on fire, I love that term. What you're saying is you're feeling yourself, the life, the purpose. You're feeling it. And when we feel it, it doesn't matter if we're a janitor at school or we are the CEO of a, 8, 10 figure company. We show up doing whatever it is we do with that power burning inside of us, knowing that everybody around us will feel what we feel when we're with them. And by doing that, we're not just helping ourselves, we're helping others.
Well, joy and happiness and power and truth are all contagious. Just like misery, anger, frustration, negativity, they're all contagious. You were around somebody like that, it's like, I'm going to get in the other room. When you're around somebody that's full of joy and purpose and you kind of want to be there, you want to, get up next to them, hope it rubs off on you. And then you talked about moments of joy, and I'm going to assert that you can have it 100 of them a day.
Yes, for sure.
100, 200. You can live there. Like it isn't, I got to go find that and hope I find it once in a while. You can have it, and it's tied to your purpose.
Yes.
And when you're living that way, people will give you money. They want to be around you. They want to know what you have. They want you to help with whatever they're doing because they're expecting, rightfully so, that you can infuse some of that stuff, pixie dust, magic into them, their stuff. And you can. It's not, there's more than enough to go around. It's contagious, it's shareable, it's joyful, and it's good. And so I just told you before we started, I just came home yesterday from a funeral, my mother's funeral. And a lot of people have that sad thing associated with that. And I am the next day last night on the way home on the plane with my wife, whose name is Joy, by the way. So I didn't tell you. I told you the story of us getting together. And yeah, her name is Joy. Like, you just can't make this stuff up, right? Talk about divine intervention. And she's an angel. She's a being. She walks a being of light. Anyway, so you can live this. And I am today. My purpose this year, my meaning, my mission this year is to reach 300 million people with this message of your own divinity, capability, possibility. And you can ignore me or not. And my only question is what you're doing working for you? Are you living in happy and joy right now? And if you're not, why are you defending it? Hello?
Yeah.
Isn't it time to ask yourself some of these questions and say, why am I defending it? Is this it? This all I get?
Why am I arguing for my own limitations?
Yes.
And I think that is a powerful, powerful question. As we sort of come to the end of this session, Kellan, you've given us such a roadmap to find joy in every moment, to find our story that best serves us, to give us a life or help us to find that ultimate life, my ultimate life, everyone's ultimate life, but they have to find it themselves. So as we finish up, what is the one thing you would say to somebody who's listening to this right now, who maybe is where you were in 2007, who perhaps is feeling like their life is devoid of joy, devoid of purpose and meaning? What do they do?
So it's a continuum. This is completely broke where you just were a drug addict, attempted suicide. And this is where I am now, purpose, prosperity, and joy. You might be anywhere on that. But if something we've talked about has said, I need more of that. Okay, good. One of the most important things besides get some help is learn to love yourself. Mm-hmm. If you have trouble just like absolutely being in love with yourself, there's a place to start. Like, what is the story there? What is the story that says you suck for this and this and this reason? Or I hope nobody finds out about this. I used to have 1,000 of those skeletons or whatever. I don't have any now. 0, none. That would be none. What you see is what you get. This is the same dude. And so the thing, if you said, what thing, learn to love yourself. And you know what? If you suck at that like I did, you're going to need help with that too. You're going to need help with that too, because you're going to want to defend the stories about why you're either not worthy or, or the secrets you have. You can get rid of all those. So learning to love yourself is so important. It goes hand in hand with forgiveness, not only of yourself, but of everybody. Like, forgiveness is not condoning. It's not none of that crap. It's simply making a choice to no longer allow events from the past to have power in the present, whether it is somebody else's stuff that they did or something you did. And, I had boatloads of that. It doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve your light. It doesn't light up your ability to add good to the world. All it does is weigh you down, whether you're carrying a grudge or you're carrying shame and guilt. So there's some things you need to do. Maybe you need to fix some things, whatever, but you can get rid of that stuff and it serves you and serves everybody around you. So love yourself, get the help you need. Like, hear all this stuff and go, yeah, that'd be really cool, but I got to get back to work. Okay. Your call.
Yeah. How can our guests keep in touch with you?
So I wrote a book about that, two steps. Living with Purpose and Power is a book that talks about how to create those kind of documents and how to create a daily process to make them powerful in you. So there's a place to start if some of this stuff has said ding, ding, ding in your mind. This website right here, KellanFluckigerMedia.com. It's a place where you can find all the books I've written. There's 20 of them now. I'm working on number 21. There's a contact form there. When you have a name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't hide. So, I have my own website, KellanFluckiger.com. No kidding. I paid $2 for it. Nobody else wanted it, right? Because there's two in the world, myself and my oldest son. So you can't not find me if you're looking. You do have to spell the name right. But other than that, I can't hide.
Well, to all of my guests who are listening, you have to check out Kellan. His work is incredible. His book sits on my nightstand. I read it before I go to bed, and then it's there to help me in the morning with that practice. It is powerful, powerful stuff. And we're not talking about sort of woo-woo things. What we are talking about is a practical process of transformation so that you live a life that is in alignment with yourself for your highest good on this planet. And if that highest good is to help others, fantastic. And if it is to, show up and be a sage and just simply be who you are, that's enough as well. You don't need to do anything other than to know who you are, to do the work to get there, and to in some way put your light out there in the world so that we can all see it. Kellan, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story so openly and for the work that you do in the world, because you are helping so many find and show their light.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the work you do to put a show together and how your light lifts and blesses and your encouragement is the spark that helps people take action.
Today's conversation reminds me that you don't have to give up your ambition. You just have to give it a foundation. And that foundation has to be built on truth. It's a surrender. And that is not giving in. That is allowing your world to change. Because when we surrender, we open ourselves to a willingness to stop performing and to start listening to the life that we really want, the life that is yearning to appear for us. This episode, it wasn't about addiction or recovery. It was about the moment many of us reach in those silent, dark times when we finally realize that the story we've been telling ourselves just doesn't fit anymore, and it probably never did. And the question becomes, what now? Who am I? Kellan's story shows us that the answer isn't in bigger titles or louder wins. It's in the quiet choices, the honest reflections, and choosing the kind of strength that says, I'm ready to live my life, not the life somebody else thinks I should have. If this conversation helped you to see your story a little differently, share it and subscribe for more episodes that go beneath the surface to help us make sense of the lives we're actually living. This has been Sense Making Conversations. I'm Andrea Sampson, and I can't wait to see you in our next conversation.